Hey there, and welcome back to the Ariza Inspire Podcast, where we talk about all things mental health, self-growth, and learning to live with a little more compassion, especially for ourselves. I'm Samantha, a licensed professional counselor, and no, just a reminder, this isn't therapy, but a safe place for us to answer all of those tough mental health questions we've been wondering all along. And today's episode is one I've been really excited to kind of dive into with you because, yes, again, we're talking about therapy, but this one's very different because specifically we are talking about the different kinds of therapy out there, what they're good for, and how to know which one might be a good fit for you. So this one might be a little bit longer and it's really dense with a lot of information, but stick around because there's going to be a lot to learn. If you've ever thought about starting therapy but feel completely overwhelmed by all the acronyms and names, CBT, DBT, EMDR, psychodynamic, humanistic, yeah, you're not alone. And those are just a few of the different modalities that we use in therapy. It's like walking into a smoothie shop where everything sounds good, but you have no idea what any of it actually is. So today we're breaking it all down. No jargon, no pressure, just a cozy conversation about what's out there and what might speak to you. So let's start here. Why are there even so many different types of therapy? Well, the simple answer is that people are complicated. There's no one-size-fits-all solution for healing or even self-understanding. What works for one person might do absolutely nothing for someone else, which is okay. It's just going to take a while to figure out what really fits. Because some folks are super logical and love tools and structure. Others need space to feel and explore and reflect. Some are working through past traumas. Others are managing anxiety or building a new habit. Different therapies are like different maps for different journeys. And today we'll walk through some of the most common ones, and even some that you might not have ever heard of. Kind of like trying on outfits. No pressure to commit. Just see what feels like you. So let's get started. Okay, let's start with this classic one. Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, or CBT. CBT is one of the most widely used therapy modalities out there, and for a good reason. It's kind of like mental health's version of a Swiss Army knife. It's structured, it's goal-oriented, and it's all about the connection between your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. In CBT, you learn how to catch those sneaky automatic thoughts like, I'm a failure, or nothing ever works out for me, and then challenge them with evidence. You practice building new patterns of thinking and behaving that support your well-being. It's great for anxiety, depression, phobias, and even things like insomnia. But if you're someone who wants clear tools, homework, and a focus on the here and now, CBT might be your jam. That said, if you're looking to explore deep emotional patterns or childhood stuff, CBT might feel a little surface level to you. That's where other approaches may be more appropriate. So let's dive into those. Let's talk about psychodynamic therapy. This one is kind of like therapy's vintage leather journal. It's rooted in Freudian ideas, but way more modern now. Psychodynamic therapy is about exploring your unconscious patterns, the things you might not even realize are influencing your relationships, emotions, and even decisions. Your therapist might ask about your childhood, your family dynamics, reoccurring dreams, or patterns in your relationship. Together, you and your therapist become kind of like detectives, gently uncovering what's beneath the surface. This modality is often less structured than CBT, and it tends to take its time. But if you're someone who wants to understand yourself more deeply, uncover hidden patterns, or work through long-standing emotional wounds, psychodynamic therapy can be really powerful. Next up, humanistic therapy, which sounds kind of like philosophical, and it sort of is. This is the You are worthy exactly as you are type of therapy. It's based on the belief that we all have an inner drive towards growth, healing, and self-actualization. Therapists who use this approach, like in person-centered therapy, developed by Carl Rogers, focus on creating a deeply empathetic, non-judgmental space. They're not going to give you homework or try to fix you. They're going to be with you, fully present, listening, offering reflections, helping you tap into your own wisdom. This kind of therapy can be incredibly healing if you've never had someone just sit with you with full acceptance as you are, especially if you've experienced shame, rejection, or trauma. It's less about specific tools and more about relational healing. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. But let's shift gears to a new one, dialectical behavior therapy, or what it's most commonly known as DBT. DBT was originally developed for people with borderline personality disorder, but it's now used for all kinds of issues, especially those involving big, intense emotions. So if you've ever felt like your emotions go from 0 to 100 real fast, DBT might be worth exploring. It's structured like CBT, but it also brings in mindfulness, emotional regulation, and interpersonal skills. DBT is all about holding two truths at once, like I'm doing the best I can, and I want to do better. That's the dialectic. It's especially great for people struggling with self-harm, suicidal ideation, trauma, or really intense relationship challenges. It usually involves group and individual sessions, and there's a big emphasis on learning concrete skills. Think of DBT like a life raft for stormy emotional seas. It doesn't make the waves go away, but it helps you stay afloat and steer through. But let's talk about something really different. EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And this is actually one that I've trained in. And so when I talk about EMDR, I'm always like, this is weird, but it works. Because it sounds really out there. I mean, eye movements and trauma healing. But EMDR is actually one of the most well-researched and effective treatments for trauma out there. The basic idea is this, that when we go through something traumatic, our brain sometimes can't fully process it. It kind of gets stuck. And that stuckness shows up later as flashbacks, anxiety, nightmares, or even emotional overwhelm. In EMDR, you revisit those traumatic memories while doing bilateral stimulation. Usually, it's eye movements that go from side to side, or tapping from one side to the other side, or even sounds, again, from one side to the other side. That's the whole idea of bilateral, two sides. That stimulation seems to help the brain digest the memory properly and rewire how it's stored. Think of it like when you're sleeping and you have that REM cycle, that rapid eye movement. It uses kind of the same process to kind of help you get through that memory. The cool thing about it is you don't have to talk in detail about your trauma. And many people feel relief much faster than with traditional talk therapy. EMDR can be especially helpful for PTSD, abuse survivors, or anyone carrying a memory that still feels too alive. The best part about EMDR, and I've seen it with clients and I've experienced it myself, is that in one session, you've gained so much relief, and it's more relief than what you would have gotten with traditional talk therapy. One of the reasons I was drawn to EMDR, and yes, this is going to sound like a plug, I will move on in a second, but one of the reasons I chose EMDR as a modality to be trained in is because I've seen trauma re-traumatize my clients. And it seemed like the more we talked about it, the more stuck they got in it. With EMDR, I had a tool to be able to move my clients out of that stuck and into a new life. Because sometimes talking just isn't enough. And that's where somatic therapies come in. Soma means body, and somatic therapy focuses on how trauma and emotion live in the body. It's not just in your head, it's in your chest, your jaw, your posture, your breathing. There are lots of kinds of somatic therapy, like somatic experiencing, sensory motor psychotherapy, or body based mindfulness work. But they all share a belief that healing involves reconnecting with your physical self. You might work on noticing tension, exploring physical sensations, grounding yourself through breath or even movement. This can be incredibly helpful for trauma survivors, especially those who've disconnected from their bodies in order to cope. The biggest thing about somatic therapy lately, especially if you've been on TikTok or Instagram, is that somatic therapies can be super helpful for those who are very self-aware. When you're very self-aware, yes, logically you understand things and you can process the facts of the information, but you kind of gloss over the whole emotional body feeling of what has happened. And usually for those who are very self-aware, they have this question of, why am I still stuck in this? Why can't I move forward? And a lot of times it's because they haven't really dug through the rest of it. They haven't worked through the emotion or the body feels of it. And that's why they're stuck. Yeah, they got the brain there, but they've missed half of the work. So somatic therapies have become one of the choices for those who are too self-aware because they need to be grounded back in their bodies. If traditional talk therapy feels flat to you or stuck for you, somatic work might offer a new path. So now that we've finished kind of the more mainstream ones, the more known therapy modalities, we're going to look into some other ones. And that doesn't mean that these are any less helpful. These are ones that are just as helpful or can be different kinds of tools that are needed depending on what you're experiencing. The one that we're going to talk about right now, IFS or internal family systems, has been pushing its way to the forefront of therapy lately. Because have you ever felt like there are different parts of you pulling in opposite directions? Like one part of you wants to be productive and another just wants to crawl under a blanket and hide? Internal family systems, or IFS, is all about that. It's based on the idea that we're made up of many parts, kind of like an internal family. And each part has a role, even if it's causing pain. Maybe there's a critical part trying to protect you from failure, or a sad part that's holding on to an old wound. In IFS, you learn to meet these parts with compassion, curiosity, and care. Instead of trying to silence or shame them, the goal isn't to get rid of these parts, but to build a more trusting relationship between them and with your core, wise self. It's incredibly healing for trauma, self-esteem, and even inner conflict. Think of it as learning to lead your inner world with kindness. Another big one that is not as well known as CBT or all these other ones we started with is ACT, or Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. This is all about living a meaningful life even when things feel hard. Instead of trying to get rid of painful thoughts or emotions, ACT helps you accept them and focus on committing to actions that align with your values. So rather than fighting your anxiety or avoiding discomfort, you learn to carry those feelings with you while still moving toward the life you want. It blends mindfulness, behavioral strategies, and values-based work. And it's great for folks who feel stuck, overwhelmed, or disconnected from what really matters to them. ACT says, life will be messy. Pain is a part of it. But you can still choose what kind of person you want to be in the middle of it all. And that's powerful. But there's more, because let me give you this beautiful idea. You are not the problem. The problem is the problem. And that's one of the core beliefs when we're talking about something called narrative therapy, which sees our struggles as shaped by the stories we tell and have been told about ourselves. Maybe you've been living under a story like, I always mess things up, or I'm too sensitive. Narrative therapy invites you to step back, explore where that story came from, and start rewriting it in a way that honors your strengths, values, and resilience. It's creative, empowering, and especially meaningful for people who felt defined by trauma, culture, systems, or relationships. You're not erasing your past, you're reclaiming the pen, which is a little different of a focus than our next therapy technique, which is Gestalt therapy. Gestalt therapy is kind of like a mindfulness practice wrapped up in a therapy session. It's all about being present, not just in your thoughts, but in your body, your emotions, and your interactions. In Gestalt work, you might explore unfinished business, unspoken feelings, or rules you've internalized. There's often a focus on dialogue, sometimes even talking to different parts of yourself or role-playing important people in your life. It's experiential and expressive. It doesn't just ask, what are you thinking? It asks, what are you feeling right now in this moment? If you're someone who tends to live in your head, Gestalt can be a powerful way to reconnect with your whole self. Because it's true, when we think about therapy, a lot of times we think about it as being something that digs into the past. But that's not the only thing that is bothering us, right? Sometimes when things feel overwhelming, what we need isn't to dig into the past, but to focus on what's working and build from there. Solution-focused brief therapy, or SFBT, is all about short-term, goal-oriented support. Instead of unpacking everything that's wrong, your therapist will help you identify your strengths, successes, and small steps that can make a huge difference in your life. You might be asked questions like, what would be different if this problem disappeared tomorrow? Or, when was the last time things felt a little better? It's hopeful, practical, and empowering. Perfect if you're looking for focused help with a specific challenge and want to move forward without getting too deep into your history. But at the core of our being, we're wired for connection. And how we've learned to attach, especially early on, deeply shapes how we relate to others and to ourselves. Attachment-based therapy focuses on those foundational relationships and how they show up in the present. If you find yourself struggling with trust, intimacy, fear of abandonment, or emotional dependence, this kind of therapy can help you make sense of your patterns. Not with blame, of course, but with compassion. It often involves building a secure relationship with your therapist, one that becomes a kind of corrective emotional experience, so you can learn what safe, healthy connections feel like. Because sometimes healing begins not with insight, but with being felt and held in a new way. But here's a little secret. Most therapists don't stick to just one modality. Many are integrative or eclectic, meaning they draw from different styles depending on your needs. So you might start with some CBT tools, explore your past with psychodynamic work, and do some somatic grounding, all with the same therapist. It's kind of like cooking with a spice rack instead of just salt and pepper. The important thing is finding a therapist who's attuned to you, who listens, who's open, and who's willing to adjust their approach based on what actually helps you. Okay, so how do you know what kind of therapy to choose? Well, here are a few questions to think about. Do you want tools and structure or space to explore? Are you dealing with trauma, anxiety, depression, relationship issues, or all of the above? Do you want short-term problem solving? or long-term insight and growth? Do you feel more comfortable talking, or do you want to include your body and emotions more fully? And honestly, it's okay not to know. Many people start therapy not knowing what they need, and that's perfectly fine. The first few sessions can be about figuring that out together with your therapist. If you take one thing from today's episode, let it be this: you're allowed to be curious. Therapy isn't about being broken. It's about being human and having a safe place to sort through the messiness that comes with it. You don't have to pick the perfect therapy on the first try. You might try one modality and decide, not for me. And guess what? That's okay. That's part of the process. You're learning about yourself. You're turning into what feels hopeful, what feels supportive, and what doesn't. That is healing. So wherever you are in your journey, just starting out, deep in the work, or therapy curious, I hope this episode gave you a little clarity, or maybe even a little courage, because you deserve support that fits you, that honors your story, that helps you feel more connected to yourself and the people around you. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If you found this episode helpful, feel free to share it with a friend or leave a review. It really helps others find the show. And if there's a therapy style you want me to explore more deeply in future episodes, let me know. But take care of yourself, my friend, and I'll see you next time.